documentary. Are we going to see it this year? Are we ever going to see it? Also, want to talk about the lack of announcements for any new Prince product as far as records, special deluxe editions, box sets, live shows. Not going to talk about merchandise because there's plenty of that already. So let's go ahead and kind of dive into what's going on, what's not going on. Apparently, not a lot, but there are a lot of rumors. There's a lot of speculation. There are some things that have been kind of confirmed off record. So, with this show, I always want to focus on the music. Try not to get too much into gossip, into rumors, unless it's something that affects the music, which in this case, this is heavily affecting the music. It's got a lot of the fan base on edge. I'm a patient person. I kind of understand how things work. I've seen how other artists deal with their legacies, both living and dead, and have enjoyed purchasing a lot of product. The Prince estate was moving along at a nice pace until the sort of changing of the guard. So you now have the actual family members that now have complete control, as well as Primary Wave, a company that three of the Prince heirs sold their shares to. There's an episode of Amari Purple Talk, which you can find on a podcast platform near you, and where I talk about Primary Wave. And in that, they've said that, they're getting along with the estate. Sound like it was a process of growth, but at least they seem to be on the same page. But Primary Wave, the type of organization it deals with acquiring, say, licensing to your likeness, any trademark material that an estate or an artist has, their music publishing, but they're not necessarily in the business of manufacturing albums or negotiating albums. They want to utilize the publishing to place in movies, soundtracks, commercials, social media, any type of new technology, kind of the NFT thing, the meta thing, placing songs in those avenues to generate new listeners. But they're not in the market to make albums, super deluxe editions, box sets, anything of that nature. That's still, the record companies that have licensing of that product. So again, they're getting along, but there's been no announcement from the estate in regards to anything for 2023 as of yet. And again, there's a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation. So let's take anything that doesn't come from the Prince estate or even Primary Wave, Sony Legacy, and in the case of the Prince film soundtracks like Purple Rain, Warner Brothers, anything not coming from those sources, let's just kind of take with a grain of salt. But today I just kind of want to figure out what's going on and kind of vent some of my frustration in regards to what's going on this year or what's not going on this year. So, starting with the Prince Netflix documentary, this is a project that I am looking forward to. In fact, it's probably the most anticipated Prince project this year. Or if it airs next year, we have no release date for it yet, no trailers. But yeah, it's probably the thing I'm excited about. Listeners to the show, you also know I'm a big, huge Beatles fan as well. And, back in the day, I loved the Beatles anthology. It aired on ABC. This is around 96. I think it was 95, 96. And it was on for like I think 2 or 3 nights. And I remember watching that, even taping it, from the TV. And they were about 2 hours each episode. And that was heavy. I mean, a lot of information in that. And then later they released it on home video with like at the time, 8 video cassette release. And then later, as DVD started to come around, they released a DVD version. I got the DVD version of it, and that added extra information. So, now we live in the age of streaming to where it's not unusual for a documentary to come out with, 8, 9 episodes or entire season of subject. So this is why I'm looking forward to the Prince documentary. I'm hoping that we get something in the magnitude of 8, 9, 10, 12 episodes. I think something of that length, each one a hour and a half, 2 hours, can definitely do Prince justice. But it appears that the estate is trying to hold up the release. Like I said, again, we don't have a lot of factual information. So again, take anything that you hear that's not coming from the estate or Netflix with a grain of salt. So it kind of confused me as to why, because I thought that they okayed the Netflix project. But what we kind of know from how Comerica Bank was controlling things while they were still dealing with the tax debt and sorting out all the financial details so that the actual heirs or anyone controlling the shares of the estate can officially make decisions, can do business, and most importantly, collect money. So dug up a article in Variety when the Prince documentary was first announced, and at the time, director Ava DuVernay from Wrinkle in Time, 13, lots of other Selma, well acclaimed films and documentaries, was going to be the director at the time. And one of the key things from that article goes, according to Variety, the project has full cooperation of the late artist's estate, which is providing the documentary with interviews, archival footage, photos, archive access, which includes some of his currently unreleased music. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that one part. So the project has the full cooperation of the late artist's estate, which is providing the documentary with interviews, archival footage, photos, and archive access, which includes some of his currently unreleased music. So the production, it's been about going on 3 years now, I think. So I think they're in the process of coming with a final cut for this thing, hopefully. But they've had access. Now, there's been rumor that the estate is prohibited from releasing, say, certain live DVDs or Blu-rays, certain live albums, certain tracks, because apparently, allegedly, Netflix has, exclusive rights while filming this documentary, which on the one hand makes sense. You want this thing to blow people away and you want people to come in and watch it. So having the exclusive material available, it makes sense. Now, personally, I don't believe that they're in the position to block every single thing. I think that whatever is used in the documentary, say, barring the hits, or album tracks, or film footage from, say, Purple Rain or Under the Cherry Moon. I don't think that they can block that. So, say if the estate tomorrow wanted to do a Parade Super Deluxe, well, that would be Warner Brothers' call as far as the licensing goes, because when you're doing a film, the soundtrack is a different contract than your standard recording contract. So that's the reason why those albums or the songs from those albums are still under license to Warner Brothers. But I do think that whatever's used in it, so say if there's certain vault tracks, then maybe what would hold up, say, a Around the World in a Day release, if there's a certain vault track that would be key, even though it's unreleased or maybe even something we've never heard, then it's a possibility that that could hold up an Around the World in a Day Super Deluxe for, I would say, 2 years. An example of, I guess, Netflix exercising a clause of exclusivity, for lack of a better legal description, would be the Marvel shows that were co-produced by Netflix. At the time there was Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. And when Netflix canceled those shows, therefore giving Marvel the rights back to those characters, the clause was that Marvel could not utilize those characters for 2 years. So by the time you got to a, say, Spider-Man No Way Home, and you had Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock / Daredevil make a cameo in that, then it was past that 2-year window to where they could utilize that character and bring that character into the MCU. So using that as an analogy, then you have it possible, again, if you're using, say, some vault tracks that would be key to an Around the World in a Day release, or a special edition or super deluxe edition box set, then if those songs are used in the Netflix documentary, okay, then you probably won't be able to release that for 2 or 3 years or something. But if they didn't use anything from, say, I don't know, musicology, well, obviously they would use a lot from musicology, but let's use something like my least favorite album, which would be Planet Earth. Then if they wanted to, say, come out with a Planet Earth Super Deluxe and they didn't use any of that footage or any tracks from that era, then yeah, instead of doing the parade, just drop the Planet Earth Super Deluxe. And then after the 2 or 3 years, eventually you get to Around the World in a Day. So again, that's just my thought on the Netflix documentary. Now, the Prince estate holding it up, again, I don't have any factual information, but I can see if they're trying to hold out for more money, which, my personal opinion, I don't think that's going to work too well, given that maybe if this was going on about 2 or 3 years ago, then I could see where Netflix would be able to come up with a few more million to accommodate the Prince estate. However, I think that because whatever contracts were already signed, it's a done deal. There's no more money to give. There's no money that the estate can hold out for. Also, with the way that streaming services have been kind of struggling within this last year for various reasons, you've had Disney lay off a lot of people, especially in the Disney Plus area, the animation area, just across the board with Disney. There's been significant layoffs. Same thing with Netflix. Netflix was losing, practically billions of dollars. And they've had to reduce staff and cancel shows and reduce the budgets of, future projects, or not even greenlighting certain projects. Now, I don't think the Prince documentary isn't in jeopardy. I think that because of the length of time with production, I would assume they have something of a rough cut of the documentary. But I think they're closer to the finish line to where hopefully, again, later this year, we can get something. Um, I would guess at the most 2024. Yeah, I'm kind of getting to my speculation on that a little bit later. But I don't think that, there's a problem with the Netflix documentary itself. Um, and, while I understand that there are individuals that represent the Prince estate that are entrenched in the music business, I don't know if they're influencing decisions. I don't know if it's the family, this is their actual views or beliefs or whatever it is, or certain people representing the estate that's making commentary. Again, I should say as a fan, as a consumer, and I'm not asking these people to be exactly like, the Hendrix estate or the Zappa estate, or, you know, go copy what Bruce Springsteen and Neil Young are doing with their websites. I'm not saying you have to, but I think the problem is those are valid working business models. People, like I said, Springsteen still walking the earth with us, Neil Young, um, Bob Dylan still, and, they know how to do both. They still come out with new records, new albums. They still, I throw Paul McCartney into that too. It's like for a while up until this year, even though this past year he's still bringing out archival product, but also too, he still works on new music. So they found that balance. So it's not a thing of, try to be so, work so hard to be different. Or what my personal observation is. And again, this is just my personal observation. If you have a different observation, or like I said, I get it, the estate, they're trying to play this surprise game probably, and it's just like, be patient. But again, just as a fan, as a consumer of musical product, I don't think those tactics are working. I don't believe that this is a good way to do it. The whole thing of, there, just wait and see, just be patient. I think the first time that was said was okay. I thought that was all right. Like, okay, I get it. Okay, so we're going to, all right, we'll wait, we'll sit back. But, here we are. It's a brand new year. You know, um, at whatever point, whether it was, I think June or July was the point to where the actual transfer of power took place. So you mean to tell me that you didn't have an outline, you didn't have a plan in place? The minute that this was announced and cameras were stuck in your face, it was like, oh yeah, we're going to come out with some stuff. Not saying you were obligated to announce exactly what it is. I don't think any of us were expecting the minute that transfer took place and the minute that there was a press conference, no one was obligated to say, oh yeah, we're going to come out with that, Diamonds and Pearls Super Deluxe, and we're going to drop, these remasters the next year. I don't think anybody was expecting that, but the way to say, hey, we're going to sit down, and even if you didn't have a plan or an outline at that particular point, the goal should have been, all right, we're going to sit down for a while. I would have been okay if you said, hey, we're going to take this amount of time, and then in April or June of 2023, we're going to make an announcement. And I think everybody would have been okay with that. I don't think you would, a lot of the flack that you guys are catching on social media right now for what you're doing or how you're approaching your marketing strategy, I don't think you would have caught not one single negative comment other than the ones, and that would have been a small few that would have been like, oh, why can't you just put everything out, put up a website and do this and do that, and it's so easy. That would have been just a small group of people saying that. I think that, just to say, hey, we're going to take a year, even if you took a full year and said, come July, whatever, we're going to start making announcements about what we're going to release. I think that would have been okay. I think trying too hard to quote unquote honor Prince's wishes, because my thing is this: if it was that imperative, there should have been a will. There should have been something clear cut as to what was supposed to happen with the vault, with the master recordings, because at the time he didn't own them, and certain people that are in the loop now weren't around when he got the masters back. So there was no clear cut plan as to what was going on. Yeah. Like I said, I don't want to turn this into a full rant. I can go on for days about this. But that's just my personal thought, is that I think we would have been okay if, even if now, tomorrow, you guys say, look, okay, we get it. We understand, that you're anxious, you're this and that, but, trying to, clap back at certain, it's bad. It's a bad business model. I've seen situations where estates don't get along, but it was never taken out on the fan base. It was always held internally. Tom Petty, their families were bickering for a quick minute, but they quickly got on the same page. And there's Tom Petty product out there. Zappa died in 1992. And things were rolling well with that estate up until, I think if it wasn't this previous documentary, there was some documentary that one set of family members, they were for it, other family members were against it, and they went to battle, and that kind of affected releases for a while. But they had a good 25, 30 years of, previous material. And it didn't fully, well, actually, until they got that resolved and that documentary did get released, it's back, it's back in flow. There's been consistent product from the Zappa estate going on. The Hendrix estate, Jimmy had a will. Everything was left to his father, Al Hendrix. Al Hendrix in 1972 was swindled out of the rights to Jimmy's material. And granted, while those people that were in control during that time, they were constantly putting out product, there was some in the fan base that, didn't know any better. I didn't get into Hendrix till I was like in college, so like 19. So this is around 1985. So I knew none of this stuff going on. Later in college, kind of like late 80s, early 90s, then I started buying the original albums. But I think I bought like the BBC recordings. And then there was this thing, the Radio 1. That was the original BBC recordings that whoever was in charge at the time. And it was very truncated. It was like single CD of material. But like I say, I didn't know any of this stuff that was going on, like who owned what and why at the time. But, once Al had been suing for close to 20 years and finally won in 1996. So he appointed his daughter Janie to help run what is now known Experience Hendrix LLC. And then when Al Hendrix died, in his will, just left everything to Janie. And Janie has been running Experience Hendrix LLC immaculately. Like I say, I always bring it up as an example on episodes of Amari Purple Talk. And like I said, I'm not expecting the Prince Estate to follow blueprint for blueprint. There's been episodes where I've said, hey, if nothing else, consult, hire her as a consultant, sit down and just get some ideas, if nothing else, on what to do. So, but I don't see any of these people, whether it's Janie Hendrix, I don't see, Dweezil or Moon Zappa or Zappa's wife getting on social media and, I'll say, and this is could just be me, but I think the level of what the responses are condescending. And at the same time, what I don't think is great business is too personal of beliefs. Now, on my show, there's been episodes where I've gotten personal on a lot of topics not even having to do with music, but some of it in line with Prince's personal philosophy, a lot of it my own personal philosophy. But what I don't do is get on. And I mean, there's times when you have a podcast or whatever, sometimes you do have to deal with the occasional idiot. But, it's a thing to where you're looking out for your general fan base and treating them with the utmost respect as possible. So even if you're dealing with a certain frustration, and I mean, there's people across the board, it's not just a small minority, but it's because there's no clear cut plan, and it's looking very obvious that there's no plan. No matter what you do have going on in the background, behind the scenes, in those boardroom offices or whatever, like I said, we would have respected the situation better if the minute those microphones were in your face, it's like, it would have been like, yeah, so we're going to sit down and we're going to, take the rest of the year off and then go through the holidays. And then starting this day, we're going to start working out some plans and working out some ideas. And come this deadline or that deadline, then we're going to make an announcement, and I think everything would have been okay. So to kind of wrap all this up a bit, I've been in discussion with a lot of people in the purple musical singularity, a lot of my peers, my inspirations in this whole podcast thing, and just listeners of Amari Purple Talk as well. And I'm not going to, like I said, this would be like a 3-4 hour episode if I got too deep into everything. But I do want to kind of wrap it up with this sort of statement, based on those conversations. So I'll say this, Bob Dylan is just as polarizing as Prince artistically, and has yet been putting out his vault tracks as well as new albums. And it's not about having these things out for the young people and the newbies. I'm going to say, because basically the millennials, they were the ones that brought vinyl back. And the record companies, basically the reason why vinyl is priced the way that it is, because they know those millennials have the money to buy it. And us, whether you're an audiophile or a music collector, or just nostalgic for the way vinyl sounds. Sometimes a lot of vinyl's just better. But they know we're going to shell out the money for it. Even used vinyl is starting to get a little crazy in some circles. But I don't think it's not about young or old at this point. And discovery of music is organic, and there's no marketing that's ever going to predict that. No matter how hard you try. As great as a lot of these legends are, it wasn't because it was marketed. Now, maybe there might have been an ad in Rolling Stone or something for like, hey, here's this box set, available June 25th. That's one thing. But, you know, how, most of it's been word of mouth. Somebody I know treasures an artist and they're like, hey, you got to check this person out or check out this album. So it's organic, and there's no way you're going to predict what anybody young or old is going to go for. So they make these things for the fan base, and they make these things, they'll have the single standalone available for the the newbie to get into, and then later they can get the box set or something. And I've given examples earlier. Zappa, if you go to Frank Zappa's website, and see what's available. Even during his lifetime, his thing was about beating the bootleggers, and set up this thing called, Beat the Boots, where, okay, you want to bootleg that concert? Okay, well, I've got this concert, so I'm going to master it and put it out. Plain and simple. Dylan, Neil Young also gave an example for Hendrix, Brilliant Plan. You have the classic albums, and they've been putting out live stuff, whether on CD or Blu-ray. But they also have a separate website for the material that's not quite ready for the mainstream. A lot of it is fan recorded stuff. That's that one performance, and it's only available because that fan brought a tape recorder and taped that, and they make a deal and they put that out, called Dagger Records. And it's also like some of Jimmy's home demos and stuff, and rehearsals. Brilliant concept, and again, not asking Prince to, the estate to copy that, but use that as inspiration and figure out how to try to put a Prince spin on it. And like I'm saying, Prince wasn't the only quirky artist. A lot of those artists. Neil Young has his moments. Dylan has his moments. I think Hendrix and Zappa a bit more level-headed. I don't think they really polarized any fan base, but Dylan for sure, Neil Young for sure, sometimes John Lennon for sure. But, as I'll use this as an example too, Yoko Ono, as much flack as she gets, you don't hear anybody complain when there's a brand new John Lennon box set that comes out, or Super Deluxe Edition, or John Lennon, anything that comes out. You don't hear anybody. It's like, oh, that Yoko, I can't stand her. She broke up the Beatles. Hey, here's this brand new John Lennon box set. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. You don't hear that. And what's sad is that that's what we're getting. We're not getting that with the Prince estate. It's kind of like, what are you guys doing? And it's like trying to adopt his philosophy. Look, his philosophy worked because he was here. He lived in the here and now, and he didn't want to compromise what he wanted to say in real time. That's no longer the case now. He is now the totality of his work. And us as a fan base, we don't want to see that get lost into obscurity. We don't want to see that whitewashed into obscurity. So that point of trying to honor his philosophy just isn't going to work, because there's no new music to carry through in real time to explain whatever philosophy or whatever thought he was going through at that moment. That is no longer the case. And we as a fan base pretty much understand that now. There's no more new music you can put out. The thing that we're asking for now, for the most part, is maybe the piano and microphone shows, which I think should be a box set and bundled with a sort of repackaging of the beautiful ones. That will be your complete Prince biography right there. But that's a show for another day. But I'm sorry, he is now the totality of his work, and that part of his philosophy is no longer valid because it's this vault full of music. And what are you going to do? Not make money off of it? You're going to let it sit there, all that fighting, all that bickering, all of that crazy stuff, talking about, nobody has any money. That's some of the family members sold their shares because it's like, well, hey, this is 3-4 years in the game and we still broke. So it's like, you're not going to utilize that. But I would say, if you do have a plan, if you do have a big giant surprise for the fan base, you may want to appoint somebody that's so good at social media, that's so good at conveying to the people that, hey, everything's cool. We're sitting in the boardrooms, we're working some things out, got to honor some contracts, we got to renegotiate some contracts. But once that's done, on this date or this month or at this season, we're going to start making announcements and just do it that way. But again, like I said, trying to copy what he was. He was the visionary. You guys are kind of like almost the disciples now. It's like, no, Prince had the message and you guys are getting it wrong. So just, stop pissing people off. Give us something positive that we can start talking about. We got folks quitting shows now and people fed up, and like I said, I get some of it and the why, but like I said, speaking as a consumer, speaking as a diehard fan, this kind of keeps going. Like I said, if there's nothing announced for Record Store Day, if there's nothing announced for around April 21st, if there's nothing announced June 7th, then I'm just gonna do what I do. Just be happy with what I've got right here, and there'll be just more money for the next Hendrix thing that drops. Whatever the Beatles do next, whatever that's where my ducats will be going. So so hopefully it'll all work itself out in the end. So, but until then, thank you for tuning in. Do what you do, like, subscribe, download, share the material. I do have some positive Prince stuff that will be coming up on this show. Probably the next big thing will be my 21st century albums ranked. Not necessarily best to worst, but just from what I like the least to what I love the most. So I'm going to work on that one. That'll be next week. So again, like, subscribe, become a supporter. Find me on your favorite podcast platform. And until then, create your day and create your life. Peace. Richard Cole here, and wanted to drop a little post-credit scene here because what I forgot to mention during this program were the results of a poll taken regarding what type of Prince releases do you think we will receive in 2023. Results will be announced on the next Amari Purple Talk YouTube video, which is this one. All right, so the choices were Super Deluxe Box Set, Standalone Album, Remastered Reissue Series, an Announcement, or Nothing. And if you can see, too much glare from the light there, but anyway, go over those one more time. So Super Deluxe Box Set, Standalone Album, Remastered Reissue Series, an Announcement, or Nothing. So it was a little close with the Super Deluxe Box Set, or some kind of announcement, or no announcement. But the clear winner was that we're hoping to receive an announcement of a Super Deluxe or box set that came in at 41%. Getting an announcement or getting no announcement at all. A lot of folks were leaning towards no announcement, absolutely nothing, but that came in at 36%. And then the standalone album, like either compilation or live album or something, versus a remastered reissue series, say like remaster all the classic Warner Brothers material and then follow that up with everything from 1995 to whatever needs remastering after that. That was a closer race at 12% for standalone album versus 11% for remastered or remastering of the original albums. All right, so that's the results of the poll that was taken. Thank you to everyone that participated. Like I said, we'll do more of this stuff later. And again, check you out on the next Amari Purple Talk. Peace.